Construction startup competition for year 2020. My name is Ricardo Duro. I'm recording this video from Panama City, Panama. First of all, I want to thank you for the opportunity to participate in the competition. In this video, I'm going to do three things. I'm going to explain the context of what we're doing. I'm going to explain what we think the problem within that context is, and we're going to show you the prototype that we've been building and that we're submitting as our entry in the competition. The prototype of our tool is called Contract Flow. It's a contract management tool. Before we go into the details of this page, I want to do a quick introduction. Basically, this prototype, I've been building it with my cousin. We grew up together, and we've always done these kinds of things together where we just decide we want to build something and we do it. He's a programmer in the US, and he's been working in software development for the past several years. He graduated from Purdue University with a major in communications, and later realized he had a passion for software development, and that's what he's been doing for the past several years. I've been working in real estate development and construction for the most part of the last 10 years. I also worked for a couple of years in a software development company doing mostly product development and change implementation. And before that, I studied civil engineering at Stanford University. And actually, ever since I started working in construction, I've seen firsthand how hard it is for construction companies to bridge the gap between construction management theory and what happens every day on a construction site. This prototype is basically our latest attempt to start closing that gap. I'll go right into the context just to focus more on the conversation. Let's suppose we are a construction company called New Venture Construction, and we have two projects that we're going to build, House 833 and House 834. Most likely, we'll assign a project manager to one of those projects. Let's say that's me. And then the job of that project manager, a great part of his job is going to be managing a lot of contracts underneath that project, or a lot of contracts that are assigned to that project or negotiated for that project in order to get that house built. So he'll have, let's say, he'll hire the Pinzon brothers in order to do the core and shell. He'll hire Illumitech in order to do the lighting. He'll hire Marcos Welding to do the metal work, and Jitsa to do electricity and backup generator. And then in turn, each of those contracts is going to have several activities under them that they will be completing through time. For example, Illumitech Lighting has to install the indoor and the outdoor lamps. And the Pinzon brothers, they have, let's say, the bulk of the work, where they have to, since they have the core and shell contract, they have to build the foundations, they have to build the structure, they have to build the roof, they have to build fence, and let's say several other things. For each of those activities, will be advanced over time. They will be completed over time, and several builds will be produced as those activities are completed over time. And then each of those builds will have a corresponding payment. So bill 1, it's all zeroed out because it was an initial payment. It was not a progress payment. It was just an initial type of payment. Bill 2, it is a progress payment, and it has some progress. And this payment is broken down into several things. It depends on the progress that the contractor has made and on several other types of deductions that can be made to the payment based on previous payments that have been done, on retainage that might be negotiated under a contract, and just other discounts. Let's say you lent this subcontractor a piece of equipment that he had to use, that he was supposed to supply, and then for some reason you lent it to him, and then that can be discounted from the contract. This flow of information, I think it's very universal, and I validated it not only through my work, mostly in Panama, but also some work in the US. And I validated it recently with 5 different construction companies in Panama, and with our friends from Peru and Venezuela also. The Venezuelan friend unfortunately can't work right now, but he validated that this is also how they look at their contract mostly. And as we all know, in construction, this gets really big really fast, because we just have a couple of activities here and a couple of payments here, and we can see how this Excel starts to grow really quickly. Actually, I have an example from this from one of my previous projects, and is just let's say a more real example where this is actually the house 833. We hire the Pinzon brothers to do all these activities. And then the way I solve this problem for this project, because I've created dozens and dozens of Excels that do this over the years, is that for each column for each bill, I created these columns where I was able to track the progress. And this is just one subcontract. I would have, in the real Excel file, I had, I don't know, 25 or 30 of these tabs here for each of the subcontracts, and then a separate tab where all the information was getting, let's say, unified. And then the problem with that, which is what I've validated with the construction companies that I've spoken, is it's just very tedious work. It's paper-based. There's very little traceability of what's going on. It's hard to get information on the spot. So one of the things that I heard from users is that the problem they had with this process was that whenever they had to figure out the remaining balance on a project, even though their accounting system was perfect and everything was neat, if they had to figure out the remaining balance on a project, it was super hard. And they had to go back to accounting and ask someone from accounting to do that for them. There was no way a project manager or a general project manager that could access that information quickly. So the big problem, I think, is the broader problem is not necessarily Excel, is that companies go to Excel to solve this problem, and that creates the things that we just described. But on the other end of the spectrum, there's way more advanced software, construction software specifically, that does this, and that does this really well. However, the challenge that companies have with that software is that it's really hard to implement. It may also be tedious to work through. It requires a lot of training. It's not necessarily intuitive. So even though they're great tools, sometimes companies, many times from what I've seen, companies shy away from those software tools simply because they're so hard to implement. And one metaphor that I heard recently that I thought was very accurate is implementing a new software, and this not only applies in the construction industry, this applies everywhere. Implementing a new software sometimes feels, for the company that's trying to make the change, it feels like as if you were trying to help, let's say, an athlete. It's like as if you were trying to help an athlete or do surgery on an athlete while he's out in the field playing. So if a company is an athlete and they're out in the field playing, how are you going to do surgery on them? And that's how they say. I heard that metaphor recently, and I really liked it. Is you're trying to change a company as the company is working on its everyday things. And basically, what I think the solution or one possible solution to that is to create something, let's say, in between of that spectrum, something that is not as informal as Excel, but maybe not as formal as some other super advanced softwares that already do this. And in order to do that, it has to be a tool that is very intuitive to use. It has to be easy to implement. It has to have, let's say, few buttons and few possibilities, and easy to track your work. And that's what we've been trying to build with a prototype. So our prototype is basically a contract management tool to manage payments of a contract, and we try to build it as simple as possible just to make it easy to implement for companies. We go right into that. I'm gonna skip the sign up just to make it a little faster. What we're seeing here is, let's say, the main dashboard page of the prototype. The tool is called Contract Flow for now. Let's say we are a company that it's called Cemex Ventures, and we're looking at our projects. So big disclaimer, I'm building this in Spanish because I think Latin America is underserved in these kinds of tools as well. I know there are companies that do have their software versions in Spanish, but I wanted to focus it on Spanish from the beginning in order to focus it on Latin America. So I'll be very descriptive on the things that I am seeing on the screen, just so that we can go through the flow of information easily. So like I was saying, let's assume we're Cemex Ventures. We are a company in the construction industry, and we're looking at our project. Here we can create a new project, and then there's a summary of whatever projects we have. I haven't built the budget part yet, so it's blank. We can see we have contracts for a value of 8 millions. We have completed work for this value. We have paid work for this value, and we have a remaining balance to pay for this amount. This information is coming from this company's projects, which right now are only these two. So we have one project, which is we're going to do in the Museo d'Orsay, we're going to do some kind of construction project. We see that we have stuff that's been, let's say, hired. We have people or we have contracts that we have set up. We haven't done any work yet here. And then we're also working on the Museo Reina Sofia, and we have hired work for $1.4 million, and we've completed some work, we've paid for some work, and we have a remaining balance. So you see this page, we're trying to make it as simple as possible. You have a button to create a new project, and you have your two projects. If you were to create a new project here, let's go back to that house 833 that we were building, and we're going to build it in Panama. So when you create a new project, what will happen is that it will take us immediately to that project's page where we can start assigning contracts to that project. My internet has been a little slow today, so I apologize for that in advance. So now we are in the projects page, and we're seeing very similar information. We're seeing a summary up top. We can see some details of the project. We haven't assigned anything to this project, so it's empty. And we can see we can build the budget. I haven't built that yet, so I'm not showing here. That is the next phase I'm going to do. And here we can start assigning contracts to the project. So let's say we are the project manager, like I was saying before. Ricardo is the project manager for House 833, and he has to start setting up several contracts. And let's say he'll do a plumbing contract, and get created right away. And then an electrical contract like we have before. So as you can see, it's pretty easy to start creating information underneath it. I'll go back for a second to a project that already has information, just so that we can move faster. As you can see, we created these contracts underneath, and they're all zeroed out because we haven't assigned any activities to them. But if we are a project manager working on we've just been assigned this project, we can really quickly start setting up all the contracts that we need to work on. Go back. As you can see, my breadcrumb feature is a little weird looking. I still haven't figured out the best way to do that. The intent here is to have some kind of navigation text that shows you where you are and that it's easy to go back and forth. So I'm going back to the projects page now, where we'll be able to see not only the two projects that we had before, but we'll see that now we've created a new project. It doesn't have any value under the contracts yet. If we were to add value to those contracts, it will be updated up here. Let's go into the Museo Reina Sofia project for a second, and we'll see a more, let's say, advanced version of what we were seeing before. And we can use this to go through the full cycle of information. So what are we seeing here? Like before, we're seeing a summary of this project. This project has several contracts for the total value of $1.4 million. It has some completed work. It has some paid work as well. It has a remaining balance. If we see the contracts within this project, we have a core and shell contract, an electrical contract, an HVAC contract. Just like before, if we were to add something here, we would add a contract, and we can start. We can either finish adding the contracts, or we can start working on that contract. So how do we work on the contract? So these contracts have work done in them. They have hired work. They have value in them, let's say. They have some kind of payment and some kind of remaining balance. But for example, the HVAC contract is empty. So let's go into that HVAC. Actually, let's go into the electrical contract because it already has a payment, so it'll allow us to go a little faster. I'm ignoring this for now. I'll explain it later. Basically, what it is that this contract has a pending payment. I'll address that later. Let's go into the electrical contract for a second. What will happen when we go into the electrical contract is that we'll see all the activities that are within that contract. So right now, like I was saying before, we're Cemex Ventures. We're in the Museo Reina Sofia project, and we're looking at the electrical contract. And we see that it has several activities. It has to build the electrical main feed. It has to install tubing, install circuit panels, wire circuits, and all of these activities have value to them. And that's where the value of this contract comes from. So the contracted value is right now $39,000 because of what we've added here as activities. These activities have zero progress. That's why this is zeroed out. And if we wanted to add an activity to this contract, let's say they have to do some kind of like final inspection, and they're going to charge for that for whatever reason, and it's just one unit, and they're going to charge us, I don't know, $1,500. final inspection, and that activity gets added down here. If we were to do something different, let's say they had to, within this contract, they also had to demolish old electrical feed, and that requires, let's say that they're actually going to do some concrete demolishing, and it's going to be 50 square meters of concrete that they're going to demolish, and they're going to charge us, I don't know, $9 a meter for that. I just want to show you how how the value of the activities get calculated. So it's basically a quantity, a unit price, and a total, which is, from my experience and what I've seen, it's just a typical way that things are priced out in a contract, or even in a budget, and even in an estimate for a project. So now that we have these activities for the contract, and the contract value has increased to $41,000, let's say that we want to make a payment to this on this contract. So we go to this one button. So like I was saying before, there's a summary area where, yeah, you can do a couple things. You can add activities to what you're doing, and then you can move to the next step over here. The next step is to create a payment. And what that's going to do, it's going to load up all of our activities, all the current activities for the contract. If we were to add activities midway through the contract, they would also load up. The contract can change through time. So we have this. We have our activities loaded, and in our previous conversations with builders, some said they like using percentages, some said they like using dollar amount, and some said that they like paying by units. So we've tried to summarize all that right here. So build the electrical main feed, you can say that it's built up to the 25%, and they've started installing tubing, and it's up to 10%. They had to buy the circuit panels, and we're going to pay them for that, and we're going to pay them, let's say, $2,000 for that. So like I was saying before, you can change either the percentage or the total value that you wanna pay, and it's going to show you here the incremental amount that you're showing. This is the previous bill in this contract had 0, so everything that we're showing here is just the same number, because it's actually, this number is subtracting this one from this one to show this. This one is 0, so it's showing the whole number. I'm going to do something differently here, actually. I'm going to zero all these out for a second. And let's do an initial payment. Instead of doing a progress payment, let's do an initial payment. So even if everything is zeroed out, I can request a payment. The next step would be to request a payment. And let me check. Let me see, because we may have already done an initial payment in this contract, and I didn't, and I wouldn't want to do 2. I mean, you could, but I wouldn't want to do 2. So let me check if that contract already had a payment. I'm gonna go back. Exactly. So this contract has 0 progress, but it already has a payment. So that means that there's a payment pending to be approved. So that was an initial payment. If it has 0 progress and it already has a payment, it was an initial payment for that amount. So let's go into the contract and let's actually put progress in the activities as we were doing before. Sorry for the back and forth. Let's put progress on the activities like we were doing before. We already added an activity. I already showed you that. Let's put progress in them, and I'll show you the payments page. So let's just say the electrical main feed, they've already done that, and they are installing tubing. They've started doing that. They've installed a couple panels. So let's pay them some for that, and let's say that they haven't done any of this. So we'll keep all of those in 0, and we'll request a payment. And basically what we'll see in the payments page is a breakdown of all the different components of a payment. The first thing is you can choose the type of payment. It's going to the second option, which is a progress billing. It's going straight into the second option because it's a progress billing. It's recognizing that an initial payment was already made. So it's going straight into progress billing. If we wanted to do another initial payment, I mean, we could. This is a progress billing, and this is to pay for retainage. So the options, what becomes available down here, according to what you choose here, varies, and the math varies a little bit. So that's a quick way to make sure that you're processing your payments correctly and that everything is adding up correctly. So we're doing a progress payment. The contract value is $41,000. We've made 46% progress on the contract, which is a value of this much. And then the incremental value of this contract is this much. This is the line to do an initial payment. It's not available right now because we're doing a progress payment. However, we can change, given that the contract already has an initial payment, we can change how much of that initial payment we discount in this payment. If we were to discount 0, you can see that the initial payment was $9,800, and we can discount whatever amount we want from that. The reason we did this in a flexible way is that even though what I've seen companies discount the same progress amount that they made on a bill is what they discount from the progress payment, sometimes they do accelerated discounting. So let's say after the first payment they want to discount everything, they can just discount everything after a first payment. If not, this just preloads with whatever progress you've made and it'll discount that. You can include a retainage. Let's assume we negotiated a 5% retainage on this contract, so it'll do that 5%. And if you needed to do other discounts to the contracts, like I was saying before, say if this subcontractor needed to borrow some equipment from you and you actually rented it to them and you're just going to discount them from the next bill, this is a place to do that. So this on the next line is just a subtotal of it's adding up what we've included up here. We have an IVA to pay or like a transfer tax. It adds it here and you request a payment. When we request a payment, this would probably be done by a project manager, so it takes you back to that project's page where you can see, as before, we had a pending bill, the current shell contract. Actually, this bill is saying that it's rejected, and so we could actually go into that bill and change it and re-request it. And now we see that in the electrical contract we have a requested payment. And we have other things down here. Now, instead of assuming we're the project manager, let's assume we are someone that supervises the project managers and that is in charge of approving all payments. That person, instead of having to come to each project's page to make changes to payments here, we have a dedicated page for that. So this page, the easiest way to find it is here. It's just a payments page. However, I'm going to switch screens for a second because I have signed up with a different user in this other version of it's the same version of the app. I've signed up with a different user in another web browser. What this other user can see, let's assume now we are the person who approves these payments. And actually as a software, we are, let's say, agnostic to whether you have someone that approves or not. So even if I am the project manager and back on the project manager's page, I could approve my own stuff. So I've requested, let's say, this payment here. You see, this is in the rejected column, and it was rejected by. I created these fake email addresses. It was rejected by Cemex accounting. As a project manager, I can, and what you'll see is this will update. It's kind of like a digital signature. It's a very basic version of a digital signature, but it's just to keep track of who's doing what. So as a project manager, I can let's say approve my own payment, and it'll jump it over to the approved column, and it'll update who approved it. So even though you can make your own change, or you can approve your own stuff, you're leaving a trail of what you're doing. So that's one way that we found can help companies simplify their processes and simplify the implementation of the software just by showing them everything that is happening instead of going into which we'll do, and we already have done some of that. Instead of going into very complicated, let's say, user validation and permissions, if you just show the truth, if you just show reality, that's, let's say, a very robust shortcut towards that gets you an easier software implementation. And because everyone is seeing the same information, everyone is seeing the same pages, and even though we do have restricted some of the actions that some person can do and some other people can't do, we've tried to keep that to a minimum, and that really accelerates project implementation, software implementation. So, like I said before, I'm here. I'm a PM, and I just approved this contract to myself. And here we can see that the Cemex PM is also the one who requested this payment that we just billed for the electrical contract. Let's go back to here where I'm signed in as an accountant. The accountant is seeing the exact same information. Everyone has the same information at the same time. That's what's so interesting about this. When you're doing this in Excel, Excels are coming back and forth. Files are getting lost. There's huge file libraries where there are several versions of the files. People are collaborating or are creating information through email and through WhatsApp and through Excel sheets that are everywhere. So there's not a single place where all the information lies. Actually, that's not exactly accurate. There usually is a single place where all that information lies, and it's usually in accounting. But not everyone has access to the accounting system, or not everyone should have access to the accounting system. So it's hard for everyone to have the latest information on the project. And it's also hard for everyone to know exactly where they're standing and what they should be doing next. This kind of page, if I'm the accounting person, which right now I am in what we're seeing, it's obvious to me what's been requested. If I have anything to do there, I can do it. Let's say I'm accounting, and all I have to do is everything that is approved, I have to create a check and pay it. This payment, for example, I cannot create a check because it does not says who to pay to. So I'll reject it and I'll send it back to here. And then when the project manager, like before, goes into the software and see that his payment has been rejected by accounting, he can see what's going on and decide, oh, I didn't include who it was paid to. So you can go to the edit build page, update that, and then re-request his payment in order for it to be reevaluated. So here, like I said before, we're in the project manager's page. This has been rejected by accounting, as you can see. I've also logged in here at, let's say, like an approval kind of role. And then I am a general project manager. Instead of being the project manager for only this project, I approve payments for all projects. Go into the same page and see the same information that everyone else is seeing, and I can see that this project manager has requested a payment in this contract for this much, and I can approve it. This will automatically jump here, and it'll get updated for everyone. So it's pretty quick. It gets updated to everyone. Everyone is seeing the same information. Now I am accounting again. This is the accounting page, and I open up this page, and I can see that I have this approved payment that I have to make a check to this company for this contract and this project. Here's the breakdown of all that payment. I make the check, and again, here I am being agnostic to the business rule that the company uses. So let's say that for one company, a payment that is paid is when they give that check or where they transfer that money to the subcontractor. Or for another company, paid just means, hey, the check is available for someone to pick it up, let's say. So it's a business rule that can be easily determined inside the company, where it's just, hey, don't press this button, or don't pay a payment, or don't say in this system, don't say that something is paid if it has not been, let's say, if you don't have the invoice for that payment. So until we don't have the invoice, we don't say that something is paid. So the person from accounting can make the check, do whatever they have to do to get that invoice, and once they get that invoice, they come back here and they can say that they paid for that. That goes into the paid column. Should have gone to the bottom. Yeah, it went to the paid column, it went to the end. Actually, this column, now that I think about it, could be organized the other way. The most recent thing that you've paid should be up top. Okay, that's a quick change. I think that's it. This shows I've shown you the summary of all the actions that we're performing. And I think this page is very interesting simply because it's where everyone is seeing all the information that is going on. If we were to go back to the project manager's page and we were to go to the projects, we're going to have to navigate through up to that project. We'll see that in that project, that payment, that contract that we were seeing will no longer have a pending payment. So you see here it's been updated as well. It's the bill number 2. It was for this amount. It was paid by Cemex accounting. So even if I'm working on my project and I'm seeing this pending bill here, and suddenly accounting changes it, or hey, let's say I modify this and I correct it and it goes back to requested, showing that it's requested by me. If they make that change, or if someone approves it, I'll be able to see that change. And all that information is being updated up here as well in the summaries, in the summary for the project and in the summary for the company and all its projects. Like I said before, this is a prototype. I wanted to show you the flow of information and the general idea of what we're trying to do regarding the simplicity and the few steps that you can take in each page to make this as simple as possible. We're not solving the entire part of the problem. We're starting with this part. To implement change, you have to take it in small steps, in my mind. And from what I've spoken and people that I've shown this prototype, they can see this. They can see themselves working in this from one day to the next. They go in, they sign up, and they can start creating information, and they can start managing their projects through here. The last part that I wanted to show you is that we're also building an administrator. Okay, I've spliced the video to show the administrator function, which was not loading before. Basically, this is a menu that shows everything that's in the app. We're in the projects page right now. From here, you can navigate to the payments page as well, and you can go to the administrator. The administrator is a part of the project where we have restrictions on the type of users that can come here. So let's say only admin users can come here. And the idea of this page is it's to centralize the information related to the business itself, and maybe let's call it like backend information that needs to be managed within every project. The idea of a page like this is to give the user the ability to self-manage the app and to self-service himself regarding the naming of things, the creation of users, the modifying of cost codes, the creation of clients, and things like that. Not that these things cannot be created or modified from within the app. This is just a centralized place where they can do that information for themselves. So if we go to the business tab, it just shows the name of our business, and we could change this to let's say it's called Cemex Ventures SA, or we can make simple changes like these. You see here it's not loading properly. I correct that also. For example, you can also manage users from here. If we add an email address and click send, it'll send an email to that user, to that email and to that user saying that an account has been created, and then the user can go in, adapt their password, and start using the app. And from here we can see, we can load any of these users from our company. We can change the name. This guy's name is Anya Pineda. We can change their email. We can say instead of an admin user, this is a workflow user, and it'll get updated here. This is, like I was saying before, it's just a way for the company to be able to manage itself from one location and not have to do that much customer requests or customer support requests to the provider of the app, which would be us in this case. Like I said before, here's just the general navigation menu. If we go back to projects, we'll go back to that centralized project page I was explaining before. I'll stop the video here, just so that the rest of the explanation can keep going on the original video. I've explained the most important part of the software, which is this information flow, to keep the contracts updated, to keep them all the information on all contracts centrally located and easy to access for everyone as well. So that's it for us. I hope you appreciate this presentation, and again, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to provide this entry into the startup competition. Thank you.